comics and podcasters political tools now? I'd say yes, but they have been for a very long time. Even Joe Rogan has had very, very many politicians, people running for president, people who seemed like that they were going to win the presidency, like Bernie Sanders. So it's been going on for a long time. It's just, getting more and more and more popular until the next form of entertainment comes along. But I don't see what comes after podcasts. But everybody says that in every generation. So, Abba and Preach. I like to watch these guys every once in a while. Here we go.
All right. Next topic.
All right. We're rolling. Good to see
Let's
you,
go.
sir. Here we go.
Madam Vice President, welcome to Call Her Daddy.
But your thing is going really great. My son's a big fan of yours, Baron.
Madam Vice President, glad to have you here. Ready to bring the funk?
I'm trying.
We are sitting down with Mr. President. Mr. President, thank you so much for being here.
I will say that Trump definitely goes on the actual cool podcasts that people like, that actually reach a wider audience. Stuff like Call Her Daddy, and I don't even know what that last guy was. Who was that? Like, that ain't it, bro.
Thank you very much.
I remember when I got on YouTube and I was very excited over the last 8 or 9 years when I started hearing about independent media. Comedians, podcasters, news people running their own individual platforms to essentially be free from the chains of advertisement.
Yeah.
And as a result of being free from the chains of advertisement, they would be able to say the vast majority of what they wanted or be as unfiltered as possible, right?
Yes.
I am now convinced that comedians and podcasters are just political tools like everybody else. I no longer think there's that same separation between mainstream media and independent media like I used to. And I don't think that's true for all of them, but a good majority of them. And let me give you an example.
Well, actually, I think it is a good sign that we have won and now we have become the mainstream. But that's bad because absolute power corrupts absolutely, so it's going to start going to shit pretty soon too. Then we'll have to move on to the next thing.
We always talked about how, we do these platforms so we can say whatever we want. And now with this election cycle, everyone is being careful about what they say during interviews, be it Trump, be it Kamala, Call Her Daddy or whatever. And they're doing what essentially is like puff pieces, right? Having these people on, giving them soft questions, never checking them on the record, never fact checking none of it, just letting them yap about whatever they want.
As an anarchist, somebody who tries to stay away from both sides of the political spectrum, all sides of the political spectrum. Really, a spectrum is like, it's spectrum. You know what a spectrum is. I'm an anarchist. So I try and see what everybody is saying, and yeah, they're right. They're absolutely right.
And the reason they're doing this is not because that's who they are. The reason they're doing this is because they would lose access to this interview. So I'm like...
Some of them definitely. Joe Rogan, I think he actually felt like it was important. He had the means to skip it. He skipped it all this time, and he didn't have to do it. It is kind of funny that he chose right before the election to do it, though. I feel like that was about 10% on purpose.
You guys spent all this time whining about mainstream media being so fake because of advertisers, but y'all doing the same thing so you don't lose access to these powerful people, to these influential people. How is that any different? Yeah, in the context of watching Kamala Harris do the Call Her Daddy podcast, watching Trump do Rogan or Flagrant or Theo stuff, and just watching all these different things, I don't think these types of interviews are bad in a vacuum. What I don't like is that now politicians are able to just jump around, do a bunch of interviews where they're asked softball questions and only do those types of interviews.
Yeah, not just that. Now that politicians have seen, it's getting people elected going on these podcasts, I better start going on podcasts. So you're going to get even more political podcasts. We've already got too much politics in podcasting. I don't watch podcasts really anymore anyway. I actually think the new podcasting is like streaming and like Discord calls and stuff like that.
Why is it that world-renowned journalists are not the ones who are having as much access to these people, right? Even if they're independent, okay? Why are they not getting access, but someone like Rogan is? And the reason being, I know. Trump knows he's going to go on Rogan, and it's going to go well for him because he just really has to sell his personality. Even though there's questions about his...
Yeah, I say that I think that streaming is the new podcasting. I don't know that. I said earlier, I don't know. I don't know what the next thing is. Nobody does. It just seems like that might be. It might be. It might be It might be the DVD that killed the VHS.
Record, even though there's questions about his flip-flopping on certain things, those never are going to come up. No. So he knows he can go on here and do really well for himself and come out great. And I know this is true because Rogan said so himself.
And by the way, I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've had the opportunity to have him on my show more than once. I've said no every time. I don't want to help him. I'm not interested in helping him.
The night is still young. We'll see.
If I have him on, the night.
Lex was right. Lex was right. I watched this. I think I might have reacted to it. No, I didn't. I don't think I did. Did I?
Night is still young?
Yeah.
You think I'll have him on?
I think you'll have him on.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that? Because you'll have Putin on?
And I think you had like people like Kanye on, for example, and you had a great conversation with him.
Yeah, but Kanye's an artist. But Kanye doing well or not doing well doesn't change the course of our country.
Yeah, but do you really bear the responsibility of the course of our country based on a conversation?
I think you can.
If the course of the country is based on a conversation, then we still need to have the conversation. Like, that's not the fault of the conversation.
Revitalize.
That's fault of the people.
And rehabilitate someone's image in a way that is pretty shocking. Look at the way people look at Alex Jones now, because Alex Jones has been on my podcast a few times.
Listen, I watched Joe Rogan. I'm 34 now. I used to watch it when I was 19. Okay, so you have to understand, 15 years ago, I used to watch Joe Rogan clips all the time. When it used to be like a split screen, it would be 3 people talking. It would be like Brian Redband, it'd be Joe Rogan, and some of you are cringing right now, but you have to understand, Joe at that time was completely different. His podcast field was completely different. His talks with Duncan Trussell were some of the best episodes. Now people watch for different reasons. The audience has gone in a different place. Joe has gone in a different place, and I don't watch nearly as much. But here's one of the best reflections Joe can have, and it is what made me really like him when I first saw him. He's right. I hear comics say all the time, like, oh, why are people acting like we're influencing the election? Why are people acting like we have all this influence and we're changing things? Even Lex Friedman said that. And I'm like, well, why do you think these politicians want to go on these platforms?
Yeah, I think it's true. And I think that people need to bear that responsibility, but also know that it's not their fault if it actually does change things. And it is kind of their responsibility to have the conversation. If you think it's going to change things, whether good or bad, I think the conversation needs to be had. Because you don't know. We can't tell the future.
If it's not influential, it has no merit, why do they want to get on there?
Because
why are so many of the public demanding and asking for this thing to happen? Why is it that brands come to you and pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars to advertise their product for 1 minute if you have no influence over your audience? Why is it that audiences will shell out thousands of dollars for meet and greets, but you have no influence over it? When people say this, do they think just because they're kikiing and laughing on this thing, they have no influence? No. When people spend hours of their day on a regular basis watching you, they build an attachment. They start trusting you. They take your opinions indifferently. They start to actually grab your opinions and repeat them in real life. You have a tremendous amount of influence, and Joe's no different. Now, if Joe just had a change of heart and he says, I think it's worth it because Trump is the right candidate and I want it, that's fine.
The problem is that he offered 2 conversations, not just one. He didn't offer just an interview with Trump. He offered an interview with Trump and an interview with Kamala. And Kamala turned it down. So whose fault is that really? But we all really knew that it was going to be way better for Trump and it was actually going to be bad for Kamala. So, who knows? Can't tell the future. Can't tell the future. I guess we kind of can, but not really. We don't know who's going to win this election. Unless you're watching this after the election. Tell me who won down in the comments.
Fine. But anyone who's pretending like these things are just jokes and we're just here to talk, no. You guys are also here to serve as a political platform for these people during an election season. There's a reason why people are saying, whoa, Trump went on Rogan. He's definitely going to win now. Why? Because they're recognizing the effect. But at the same time, I have these people trying to convince me it's just jokes, bro. We're just talking. That's not true.
That's
not true. You're not in a comedy club roasting Trump while he's there. That's not what's happening. You guys are having a substantial conversation.
Could you imagine if Trump would have went on Kill Tony? Man, if that would have happened, I think Trump actually would have won every single state.
Where you're changing the perception people have. And if you go read those comments, you'll be like, yo, I didn't know Trump was like this. I didn't know what's her name was like this. I really liked her this. It made me closer. And whether you like it or not, most people, when they vote, they don't really vote on policies nearly as much as people would like. A lot of them just vote on based off how the person makes them feel, how likable they are. So, yeah, these things have a huge influence.
We are the new media.
Yep.
The podcast,
100%.
the commentary, all that, that's the new media. It is. So whenever you go...
I'm an active listener of Tim Pool. He's been talking about this for a very long time. Since I've been watching him. Since he went on the Joe Rogan podcast the first time, he's been talking about this. That we're going to replace them. And they're getting desperate right now. They were already desperate. They're even more desperate now when they were attacking everybody, and a lot of them are still attacking. But I'm seeing leftist media start to pull over back into the center, which is not a good sign, because I think those companies just need to go away.
Politician basically wants to be likable. It's a popularity contest. So if that politician goes on the podcast just to talk, while they're in an election, they seem more likable. It ain't even about the views. It ain't I got nothing to do about the views or whatever at some point. It's just how you like them better. So of course the image changes. Because you look at a politician a politician looks like a robot. What is being said about politicians?
Yes.
They're puppets, they're robots, there's just, they're not humane. And when you see a politician for once...
It blows my mind whenever I see people, gather themselves behind a politician. Like a cult. I mean, I understand supporting your guy, but there are people that straight up worship these candidates. Greatest candidate of all time. Gonna be the greatest president of all time, Kamala Harris. Even though she has proven nothing of that. And I've yet to see proof that Trump's actually going to be able to get anything done. And Trump's not who I'm afraid of. Who I'm afraid of in the Republican Party is the other Republicans. Trump, not that bad to me.
Just taking the script off. Just having a normal conversation. You're like, God damn, I really didn't. That's what you're changing your views on that politician because he looks more humane, and that's the game. Yes, I'm gonna go on TV and all the journalistic outlets to talk about my curriculum and all the things that I have and the questions that I have about what I want to do running and stuff. But when I go onto a podcast, you're looking at the humane side, and I think that's what gets to people.
What gets to me is interviews like Joe Rogan and JD Vance. That was a good interview. That was like a natural interview, just two dudes talking. That's the kind of politicians that I want to see on these podcasts. Not the ones that are giving their talking points and what's his name? John Fetterman. He was just giving talking points the whole time and talking about himself. That was boring. Nobody wanted to watch that except for to see him talk about his brain issues and not know what the hell he's talking about when it comes to Democrats doing shady shit.
People are disengaged from politicians because they really don't look humane. You ask them a question, they can't answer the question straightforward. They always have a script and stuff. They always have something or a way to esquive the question. Now when they go on these platforms, you look at the human side. You don't even think about whatever they had to their curriculum. You don't even think about all of that anymore. You see, oh wow, that person is a likable human.
And you guys are more trusted than the average.
He puts ketchup on his steaks just like me, regular old Joe.
Average news anchor than the average independent journalist. Even though those people are going to be generally more equipped to get to the bottom of whether or not this person's record's any good, whether or not this person performs under pressure. Instead, we're now hearing about fucking whale depression and whatever the fuck it is. It's like, what? Yeah,
politicians need to be going on shows like Timcast. No, I said Timcast already, but I mean, like, that's really the only political show I watch, except for maybe Quartercast. I watch it sometimes. Otherwise, I get my news from articles, usually from left-wing sources, even though I'm technically right-wing.
Watching Kamala on Call Her Daddy is like, what are these questions? It doesn't matter what you intended. What is the actual effect of what you're doing? If folks want to do this thing and have these conversations with these politicians, fine. But you have to hold their feet to the fire to some degree, okay? And if you're not going to, then we need to at least ensure that they're going to have other opportunities to have their feet held to the fire. But when it's just a bunch of puff pieces, when most of the landscape is just 3 hours of, I'm just going to talk, rather than 3 hours of, I'm going to answer to what my record is, why I voted on this bill at this time that disadvantaged these people, why I voted for this when I said I was going to do that. We don't get 3 hours of that. We never will. Why? Because what gets more votes nowadays is just sitting there and talking about how I feel about X, Y, and Z.
But also, I'm not well versed enough politically to know all of the corruption that's been alleged, and
You didn't really need to know this year. There was just so much blatant shit happening.
to understand what the whole Russiagate stuff, what's real. Like, if you really want to do that correctly, it's something that I would have to research for a long time. And to really, and I don't have that kind of time.
I think I've been having this reckoning lately, but more and more I feel reassured now that I'm seeing Tony Hinchcliffe go to Madison Square Garden during a Trump rally and do his fucking set. And people are like, no, listen, Puerto Ricans everywhere losing their mind, which
Understandable.
right before a vote is crazy. And if you guys haven't seen the comment, this is it.
A lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Bad joke. Bad joke. That was like a 4 out of 10 joke. I gave it a puff out my nose, out of my nose holes whenever I heard it the first time. Not because the joke was funny, but just because of the context of where he's doing it at. Maybe that's part of the joke. It flopped. It wasn't good. And he doesn't care. So, like, it was a mistake getting Tony Hinchcliffe. They shouldn't have done that. I'm glad they did it, because they're idiots, and it makes them all look like idiots. Because they don't actually know who Tony Hinchcliffe is.
All right.
Okay.
Understandably.
And this is not out of context. I listened to the full thing. There is no context that really makes this joke better or whatever it is. And people are running around saying, well, he's a comedian. It's just a joke. You're another political tool. You're at a political rally, okay? And you're not doing a regular set. You're doing a set. And if you guys go watch the whole thing, I watched the whole thing. All of the jokes perfectly align with MAGA values. There was no jokes aimed at Republicans. There was no jokes really aimed at Trump to like mock him. No, they were all like anti-immigrant, pro-Israel, anti-Palestinian, anti-California, pro-Texas. Jokes are just jokes, apparently. But at the same time, your whole set perfectly aligns with the ideal humor of a Trump fan.
Which is fine. But don't
don't try and hide it from us.
Yeah.
Don't make it past that. I don't. Stop. Just. I didn't know. It's just.
What do you mean?
No.
Oh yeah. If you
I'm staying neutral. I'm a neutral guy.
watch the whole Tony Hinchcliffe set, if you listen to it towards the end, he just starts repeating Trump slogans.
Let's close it out and let's make speech free again, make America healthy again. God bless New York. God bless America. Let's make it great again. I love you. Thank you. Welcome.
He almost did the salute. Did you see that? He had to change it. He put his hand up like that, and he was like, "Yeah."
In a joking set, he just repeats them. So I'm like, how is your set made for jokes, but at the end of it, you're just doing a political advertisement? Is it really just jokes?
Yeah.
What is independent media really? Independent media was the idea was that you were going to be free from all this influence.
Now people like me are the independent media. Tom Dark, Endymion, people like us who are streaming and just posting slop content. Nux Taku, some ordinary gamers, Charlie.
Are they not just dependent on it?
Yeah.
When they're cutting what they want to say just to be able to have access to people?
You're the same thing, but just same but diff.
And this is the thing. Nobody can have all these kinds of mainstream guests on consistently and have their moniker of independence, of noticing comics being very buddy-buddy with every right-wing personality on the planet and softballing all the interviews and softballing all the interactions. What is the point of being given the right to joke about anything when powerful people come by, you don't joke anymore? Doesn't that strike you as a bit cowardly?
No.
It doesn't?
No.
Okay, go for it.
Just because of the list of things that they're going to tell you not to talk about. Like, there's the list of the PR list and stuff like that. So if you want to carry your interview, you have the choice. You either don't have an interview at all and you spend all this time with the connects and everything to have the interview, or just go with the flow of that interview.
If they wouldn't have brought that up, then I was about to bring that up. But yeah, exactly.
Essentially, what you're getting at is some compromise may be acceptable because it's leading to this outcome. What I'm saying is the compromise that they're only making it in front of powerful people. What is the point of demanding free speech? What is the point of demanding the right to be able to joke about everything if it's only going to be used and waved against weaker people?
Yeah, what's the point of having the free speech if you're going to suppress the free speech that you're given just to appease a side, to make more money, to be more popular?
If it's only going to be used against people who really can't harm you, then that's the part that makes me look like, what the fuck are we doing? It's to be able to joke against trans people? Is that what we got this shit for?
It's all to make more money.
I mean, I don't know. I was just so excited because at the
By the way, not a Tony Hinchcliffe hater. I love Tony Hinchcliffe. This is all the fault of politicians. I don't fault comedians for wanting to get a quick buck, because that's what they do. That's their whole lifestyle, and they don't care. If it's funny, it's funny. Doesn't matter how funny. Doesn't even actually matter if it's funny, as long as it's a joke. Sometimes it could be extremely not funny, and that's the point. And that is funny to somebody else.
advent of independent media, it really looked like such a cool time. Watching people talk about psychedelics, talk about relationships in an unfiltered manner, talk about men's issues, and not have to worry about it. I felt it was so refreshing to be able to hear topics I would never hear on television or mainstream media. That's what I loved about independent media. But now when I'm looking at it, it's just like, oh, okay.
Everything changed when 2016 attacked, and then 2020 attacked, and it got even worse.
This thing has gotten so big that independent media is just media now. There is no independence. You are dependent. You're dependent on Spotify for your shit. You're dependent on your Patreon subs. You're dependent on the guests that you need to interview, the big name people. There is no independence. Honestly, I'm
only dependent on YouTube continuing to function, or me not getting banned. That's a pretty big one.
I'm not even certain if I could feel like there's that much of a difference now between mainstream media and these media type personalities.
But when they say that this is independent, they're really talking about it's unorthodox. Yeah. It's not that, but it really is.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's just we're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But then in a different matter. But it's really just the same thing at the end of the day. The end result is the same thing. You still have bosses that you have to go by. You still have to review your advertisement through something. It's the same thing.
And you want to hear the fucked up part? The bosses for independent media aren't necessarily bosses. Sometimes it's the guests. Sometimes it's the audience. Because you go to the comments section and the audience is not happy with what you're doing, so you start changing the tone of what you say or the kind of people you.
The audience is the whole reason why the Leftovers podcast failed from Ethan Klein and Hassan. It was straight up the audience. I mean, also Hassan, but mostly the audience. It was Hassan's audience.
Interview or I'm gonna ask the question to you guys. And what I'm saying wrong? Do you guys feel like independent media is independent in the way that they present it? And I'd love to hear what you guys think. And
yes, independent media has become mainstream media. Mainstream media has become legacy media, and people online that are just, in their houses, in their rooms, their small team, their small studios. We're the new independent media. You better watch out, because we're coming for you, new mainstream media.